Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, members of the media. And let me say a special good morning and welcome to those of you viewing on live stream in St. Lucia, and a special good morning to those of you watching in the diaspora. This morning, let me start by saying that I'm reminded of the counsel that I have received many a time, that constructive criticism is worthwhile and that you should receive it in good stead. And so when yesterday, listening to Newspin, I heard renowned journalist, Mr. Rick Wayne, who is well known, criticizing the United Workers' Party in regard to its lack of response on certain statements that are being made by the current government, and in particular the Prime Minister, given that those statements were in fact dishonest, and we allow it to go unanswered, then there are unfortunately people who might believe what is being said. Like it or not, the criticism is well-founded, and as a result, I, as a member of the United Workers' Party, have taken note of the necessity to act on that advice, sound counsel that was issued to us. And so this morning, I want to look at the statements that have been made, especially by the Prime Minister, Philip J. Pierre, regarding St. Lucia CIP program as it relates to the possibility of our banks losing their correspondent banking relationships with banks, especially in the U.S. Let me first start by making an attempt to explain, or define rather, what is correspondent banking for those of us who are not too familiar with the concept. Correspondent banking relationship involves a bank or financial institution providing bank services to another financial institution or bank where the two financial institutions or banks are not in the same country. Explained simpler is, for example, you could pick any of the local banks here in St. Lucia. They carry out a relationship with banks, say, for example, in the United States of America, and those banks, on their behalf, facilitate some financial transactions. So instead of our local bank opening a branch, say, for example, in New York or Miami, the banks in those countries provide services that facilitates the banks here in St. Lucia. And those services involve international funds transfer, what we sometimes relate to as wire transfers. It involves cash management services, check clearances, loans, letters of credit, or sometimes matters related to foreign exchange. And so it is a very important service that, if not available, can severely hamper commerce between St. Lucia and those other countries, and provide and present a problem, rather, for St. Lucians who are doing business with those banks. So correspondent banking between two banks, as I said, or financial institutions that are based in different countries, and this relationship is based primarily on trust, as one bank depends on the other to ensure that the funds that they're transacting with is not illegal. They have to ensure, for example, what the source of the funds are, and to ensure that they comply with the issue of anti-money laundering. And there, I would delve now into our CIP program and how it relates to this subject. We have heard in recent time the massive scandal that has clouded our CIP program. We have heard that MSR, a foreign company operating in St. Kitts in the CIP program, has taken not only the CIP program and individuals in St. Kitts to court, but he has filed that RICO case in the United States where the CEO of our CIP program has been named as a respondent, and our minister, it is said, will also be named as a respondent in that case. So it means that our CIP program is under scrutiny, and allegations and accusations are being made of irregularities and illegalities that are taking place in our CIP program. And what was mentioned, for example, is that they are underselling the St. Lucian passports. And for those of you who do not fully understand the CIP program, our CIP program entails the selling of St. Lucian passports to foreign citizens who then become St. Lucian citizens, and there are various aspects of the program. You can simply apply to become a citizen and get your passport and pay $100,000. You can also go into what they refer to as the real estate program, where you can come and invest in a real estate project like a hotel, for example, and then you'll be given a certain number of passports that you can sell to other nationals to raise the funds, some of the funds that is needed for that project. And there is also, that we have heard, a new program that no details has been given on, the infrastructure program, where that company or developer will come into St. Lucia, be approved and given a number of passports that they will use to sell, to generate revenue, that they will, some of which they will use to develop infrastructure in St. Lucia, such as roads, bridges, houses, and so on. Now, what has happened is that we are being told that there are stipulated legal statutory prices that our passports should be sold at, and it is illegal to sell those passports below that price. However, we are being told that there's evidence that our passport is being sold on the price, which is illegal. Now, that illegality becomes a major problem beyond the CIP program if the monies, the proceeds from the sale of those passports find themselves in US banks. Okay? And so from the time illegal funds derived from illegal means or transactions find itself in US bank, the question of money laundering comes into play. And if it is discovered that that is the case, then, of course, sanctions will be laid. Of course, legal charges will be laid against people as well. But what we are concerned about as people who are not involved in any illegality is that the sanctions may involve the termination of the correspondent banking relationship, which means the banks, for example, in America, will no longer do business with the banks in St. Lucia, and that will limit our ability as St. Lucians to do business in those foreign countries. Our Prime Minister has come out and made a statement on many occasions that it is the leader of the opposition, Honorable Alan Chastanet, that is trying to cause St. Lucia to lose its correspondent banking relationship, and that he wants that to happen, and he is the one doing things to cause that to happen. Well, I want to say to St. Lucian, that is a shameless, blatant lie, which the Prime Minister knows better, rather than to say what he's saying. And I know that he knows better, because if you look at the Prime Minister's background, his training is in a finance-related field, accounting. He has a degree in accounting. He has a degree in business administration. He is the Minister of Finance. And even if he knew nothing about finance, about all of those things, being the Prime Minister of this country and knowing and hearing of the scandal that is going around, swirling around our CIP program, he should have by now educated himself on the issue. So he knows better. Now that brings me to another fact. You know, when you examine the St. Lucia Labour Party and the practice of intellectual elitism that they have engaged in for some time now, these are people who, by and large, many of them have gained advanced education at the expense of ordinary poor St. Lucians who have financed and facilitated their studies. Instead of using that education to come back to serve St. Lucians, what they are doing, like the Prime Minister is doing, is to use that education to fool St. Lucians, to insult St. Lucians' intelligence, and to bluff their way through to get power. I think that is despicable, what the Prime Minister has done. And my advice to the Prime Minister is that, one, instead of being dishonest repeatedly, and we have many accounts where the Prime Minister has been blatantly dishonest, is that he should begin to tell the truth. Because when he misrepresents himself in that manner, he is making a statement about the rest of us as our leader. And so, one, take control of the program instead of blaming others, because Honorable Chastanet is in no position and in no way can influence what he's being accused of. What is influencing that possibility is the behavior of the current officials and minister of our CIP program. And if the allegations prove to be true, that is what will cause us to lose our correspondent banking. So it is the St. Lucia Labour Party that will cause us to lose our correspondent banking, and the lack of action on the part of our Prime Minister, who is the Minister of Finance, that will cause this. So I want to ask the Prime Minister to take control, and by taking control, he can first of all direct that there be an investigation done. In the meantime, dismiss the CEO of the CIP and the minister responsible for CIP. Secondly, ensure that what the law requires is done. That is, he ought to provide and table to the Parliament on an annual basis a report, an audited report of the CIP program, so that we all can see what is transpiring in that program. And thirdly, be transparent. Come out and let us know exactly what the situation is. Do not lie to St. Lucians as you do all the time. Because that asinine statement that you are making as Prime Minister, accusing someone else who is in no position to do what you are accusing him of, rather than taking responsibility and doing what you are supposed to do as a leader, is not helping our situation, is not going to solve the problem. So, Prime Minister, you ought to stop the lies. You have been very dishonest, and in no exception is the CIP case, where you've been asked many questions, including who is paying for the legal representation of the CEO of the CIP program. You have not answered those questions. Be transparent, be honest, stop deceiving St. Lucians, because many of us know better, and we will educate those who do not know better. This is an abuse of power, and this is an insult to St. Lucians. We ask that you come better than that, and we resent the idea that you continue to point fingers at others when, in fact, the fault lies with your administration, with you at the helm. So, ladies and gentlemen, in future, we know now for a fact that it is Philippe J. Pierre, Ernest Hilaire, and the CEO and members of the CIP unit that have created the problem that exists now, and we are asking them to take the necessary steps by first taking responsibility to ensure that that scandal does not go beyond where it has gone already in tarnishing the reputation of St. Lucia and compromising the integrity of our CIP program, and that we can avert that very possibility of losing our local banks, losing their correspondent banking relationships, and the rest of us losing the possibility of our free visa access to some countries, and the possibility of not being granted visas to go to certain countries. I thank you.
Pleasant good morning to the media and viewers at home who are listening to us, who are following this briefing this morning. The potential to lose our correspondent banking did not start in St. Lucia and the Caribbean today. For several years, organizations like the EU, OECD, along with the US, Canada, and the UK have expressed concerns about CIP programs all over the world. While I was the parliamentary representative for Soufrière Fond Saint-Jacques, there were numerous legislative changes made to bring our money laundering and anti-terrorism laws in line with international standards. The CIP program, which is currently embroiled in a court case in US federal court, accusing several actors of the CIP programs of fraud, money laundering, and corruption, is a direct result of many mistakes by the current administration. What is urgently needed to rescue this situation that has reached crisis proportions is level-headed, focused leadership. Leadership that confronts the essence of the claims being made and that wisely examines the far-reaching implications should the claims turn out to be true. It's been 2 months since the RICO case has been filed in the U.S. federal case, unleashing some of the most damning allegations on our country's reputation. One would have thought by now that the government would have found it necessary to answer the many questions surrounding this scandal. But instead, St. Lucians are told that the CIP minister has to ask Galaxy permission to share information on our passports. It is now time to stop the deflecting, attempts to divert the nation's focus, and amusingly blame the opposition. St. Lucians remember clearly the outbreak of the Ukrainian-Russian war and the solidarity that CIP countries in the Caribbean showed to the US, UK, and European countries in the NATO grouping. While Grenada, Antigua, St. Kitts, and Dominica all promptly suspended all CIP applications from Russian and Belarusian nationals, St. Lucia's CIP minister said publicly, and I quote, that not all Russians were bad people that supported Vladimir Putin. Myself and the leader of the opposition clamored for the immediate suspension of Russian applications and thought it would send the wrong message to the countries that we rely upon to have successful CIP program. We argued that most NATO members fighting the war against Russia were the very same countries we enjoyed visa-free access and was selling that privilege to Russians and other citizens that, unlike us, need visas to travel to most NATO Schengen countries. So here we have a government defending citizens from another country who were engaged in a war and were selling St. Lucian citizenship, which allowed citizens from the enemy territory to enter the borders of our allies without a visa. Reluctantly, St. Lucia became the last CIP country in the Caribbean to suspend Russian applications. During the reign of the United Workers' Party, there were international concerns about the transparency of the Iranian banking system. In order to protect the reputation of our country and safeguard our CIP program, we suspended applications from Iran immediately. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this administration has resumed receiving Iranian applications. The continued suspicion by Western countries that Iran is a state that sponsors terrorism should not be taken lightly. All programs that allows Iranian citizens to gain other passports and enter countries that may have geopolitical differences with the Middle Eastern state will always be under suspicion. It is exactly for this reason that CBI programs, not just in St. Lucia, but in the entire world, have been viewed as national security threats to the countries that allow us visa-free access. It remains a major mistake that St. Lucia became the last country to sign the Memorandum of Agreement aimed at improving the CIP programs around the Caribbean. Every other country in the region signaled a greater sense of urgency aimed at addressing the many concerns that the international community would have had about CIP programs. Long before St. Lucia entered the CIP business, the international community expressed concerns about its potential to harbor money laundering and fuel national security risk. The above are the real actions that undermine our visa access to places like Martinique, where we need to go for medical assistance, jobs, business, and to visit family and friends. There is nothing, ladies and gentlemen, that Alan Chastanet or the opposition UWP can do to undermine the visa-free access of banking relationships overseas. Alan Chastanet, who runs a hotel, depends on tourists all over the world using the credit and debit cards to book and pay for the vacation experiences. Alan Chastanet, ladies and gentlemen, is also a shareholder in tourism businesses like Carnival Sailing, and any halting of our banking relationships will hurt him the most. Alan Chastanet too need to shop on Amazon and buy supplies for his various businesses in St. Lucia. It then makes one wonder about the motives behind the government's claims that we are attempting to destabilize the nation. We observe that in sister island Dominica, Bank of America has ended all CIP-related transactions from Dominica, and the UK has suspended visa-free access for Dominicans. No claims by Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit that his country is being undermined by Alan Chastanet and the United Workers' Party. But instead, he has taken responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, for whatever concerns Dominica's international partners may have with his CIP program. He has since done the honorable thing and revoked 68 citizenships which have been found to have acquired citizenship via illegal means. In St. Kitts and Nevis, Prime Minister Dr. Drew told his parliament that over 22,000 files were processed for Galaxy during the administration of former Kittitian Prime Minister Timothy Harris. Again, no claim by Dr. Drew that it is the UWP in St. Lucia or Alan Chastanet destabilizing his CIP program in St. Kitts and Nevis. It is therefore, ladies and gentlemen, unacceptable for the SLP administration to submit that the United Workers' Party is trying to destabilize the country. I think such disingenuous rhetoric from a government embarrasses all of us, whether we are Labour or Flambeau. Not only does the government's actions embarrass us overseas, but it betrays the very essence of our St. Lucianness. Today, brothers and sisters, St. Lucia, I call on the government to retract this erroneous statement and offer quality leadership to restore pride and dignity in our passports and national image. I thank you.
Well, thank you, colleague. Senator Harold Stanislaus, and I want to say thanks to the members of the media who are present here today. And I want to thank all of you who are viewing on the live stream, especially those in the diaspora. Let me remind you that on Thursday morning, we have Meet the Opposition from 9 o'clock on Rev Up St. Lucia, and we will send out the link to those of you who are overseas. And on Thursday night, you can join us for another episode of Roundtable. And of course, on Sunday, we will have a special episode of Flabo Live. Thank you very much. Stay tuned.